I'd like to thank David Ajibadi and Building Strength Webinars again for having me here this evening, and I'd like to welcome everyone who is calling in from around the globe for tonight's webinar called Simple Steps to Quit Smoking or Any Bad Habit and Replace It with Good Ones. My name is Dave Sheldon. I'm a certified professional coach and instructor, and I work with individuals, the employees of companies, and also I work with some doctors helping their patients get better results in health and wellness through what's called health coaching. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about that later on tonight, and also I have a special offer on that for those of you who are interested. But tonight is all about, to begin with, simple steps to quit smoking. And I'm going to share with you my personal story as kind of a way of beginning to tell you just a little bit about smoking or any bad habit. But I've chosen smoking because I have personal experience with it, because I've helped a lot of people quit smoking, and because it is such a difficult challenge for so many people. Now, my story is, in a nutshell, about 7 years ago, a young man in his 50s, I had a heart attack, pretty much out of the blue. Now, I say out of the blue because I had been a smoker for many years, about a pack a day, and I truly was addicted to nicotine, because we are going to talk about this tonight as a nicotine addiction. Now, here's just how bad that addiction can be, because I had a heart attack. It wasn't a serious, quote-unquote, anything serious when we're talking about heart attacks, but it wasn't a big heart attack. I was taken to the hospital in the afternoon. That evening, I had a stent inserted, and the next day, I was up and about, and a couple of days later, I got out of the hospital, feeling pretty darn good. Now, here's why this thing is so tough. I'm on my way home from the hospital, having had a heart attack and having had a stent inserted. I get off the freeway. I can turn right to go to my home, or I can turn left to go to the convenience store to buy a pack of cigarettes. And my urges, my craving, told me that I wanted to go left and get a pack of cigarettes. Well, I didn't do that. And long story short, I learned about nicotine addiction, and I learned about some simple ways to quit smoking. And since then, I've become a health coach myself and helped many people do that. And that's what tonight is all about in a nutshell. Now, I'm going to use cigarette smoking as a case study, and I'm calling this nicotine addiction because it truly is addiction, a very addictive substance. And then we're going to talk about this as a way of, as an example of simple steps to changing any quote-unquote bad habit. You're going to be able to learn to identify what your triggers might be with that bad habit. And more importantly, understand why you have failed before. We're going to look at a model for change that I think you'll find very interesting. We're also going to talk about developing healthy alternatives. It's one thing to talk about, quitting, stopping something that's bad. But what are we going to do instead? And we're not talking about just replacing one thing for another. We're not talking about, not smoking cigarettes anymore and chewing carrot sticks instead. Now, that's an alternative that we will develop. But we're talking about long-term, healthy, and also, very socially acceptable ways of doing that. And I'll also share with you some resources for help and support. So that's just some of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. Now, beginning with that case study on nicotine addiction, here's what I think is some pretty startling statistics about cigarette smoking. Cigarette smoking results in 443,000 premature deaths and $193 billion in health care costs a year in the United States. That's right, folks. Almost 500,000 people die prematurely, and many die horribly, as well as costs to our healthcare system of $193 billion, almost $200 billion, and 500,000 deaths a year as a result of cigarette smoking, as a result of nicotine addiction. Now, here's some interesting statistics. 69% of adult smokers want to quit, and 52% had made an attempt to quit in the last year, and 48% had been advised by a health professional. So what's the story here? Almost 70% of people who smoke want to quit. Many of those people have tried to quit. Most of them have been told by their doctor to quit. No big surprise there. And about half of those had used counseling and or medications. And by medications, we're talking about what's called nicotine replacement therapy. That's the gum, the patch, and so forth. We'll talk a little bit about that, but that's not what tonight's all about. Really what tonight is about is that last statistic that you see there, that of this survey done by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 6% had quit. So in real round numbers, 69% want to quit, 6% quit. Only about 10% of the people who really want to quit were able to quit. That's pretty shocking, given the numbers that we see there at the top of the page. 500,000 deaths, almost $200 billion in health care costs a year. So, why is quitting so hard? Well, and being an ex-smoker, I'm going to talk to the smokers in the group here, okay, and our worldwide audience, and also to the loved ones of smokers who may be here tonight, also people who are not smokers themselves but have someone in their life who is a smoker who has tried to quit, and they really want to help them. In any event, the smokers are addicted to nicotine and its effects. Now, it goes beyond that because smoking is a big part of your life and your routines. And smoking goes with other activities that are going on. Also, you may feel uncomfortable, ill at ease when you're not smoking at certain times or in certain places. And these are what we call your triggers. You're going to learn to identify your triggers tonight. And it's just flat out not easy. And probably most of the smokers on tonight's call have tried and failed before. And because of that, perhaps most importantly, you believe you can't. You think of yourself as a smoker, and your I'm going to call it your addict brain, you're going to rationalize and say, well, I'm still smoking, but I'm smoking less, or I'm doing something else, and somehow that it will be okay. Let's remember those numbers that we looked at, almost 500,000 people, almost $200 billion a year smoking. So it's not okay. The good news is that we can do something about it. Now, before we talk specifically about that, I'd like to introduce you to a model for change. And if you've attended any of my webinars before, where I have talked about this before, but just because it is so powerful, I really like to share it with my audiences worldwide. Now, this comes from a groundbreaking book called Changing for Good. In it, there's actually 3 authors, but James Prochaska is the primary author. So we're going to talk about James Prochaska here, okay? James Prochaska and his co-authors, John Norcross and Carla DiClemente, they went out and studied people who were successful self-changers. They conducted this over 12 years, more than 50 studies, representing more than $35 million in research funding. Okay, and all of this was summarized in a book called Changing for Good that came out a number of years ago. And in it, Dr. Prochaska and his co-authors presented a 6-stage model for change that has proven to be very, very sound. And let's take a look at this for a moment. The first stage, and these stages are sequential, they come in order. The first stage is called pre-contemplation. And in this stage, people can't see that they have a problem. They don't believe they have a problem, so of course they don't need to change. But people around them can see problems developing. Stage 2 is called contemplation. In this stage, people start to think they do have a problem. They try to understand it, to learn its causes, and they wonder how to solve it. They believe that someday they'll need to change, but they think this someday is in the future, okay, as it says here on our slide. Change on the horizon. It's not urgent, it's not in the immediate future, but maybe this is a problem. Maybe someday I should do something about this. But when we reach stage 3, preparation, that's when we have really made a change. In fact, this stage is defined by someone who is making plans to change, and that's going to happen within a month, within 30 days. Okay, in other words, people in this stage are planning to take action within 30 days. They're going to break their addiction or their bad habit and change their lives. The point here is that they're making plans. There may still be questioning some of their motives, trying to convince themselves that they need to take action soon, and that's going to happen. But now we have a definite plan and a definite time frame, and those are the people who are ready for stage 4 action. Now notice here, next to our light that's blinking from green to yellow to red, action is stage 4, and that's one of the brilliant things about this model for change. That was one of the big discoveries here. Because guess what? If you're one of the many people on the call here, and you called me right after this webinar and said, Dave, you know what, that was a great webinar, and I'm ready to quit, man. Let's start tomorrow. I'm going to throw my pack of cigarettes away right now. I'm going to say, no, stop. Okay, red light. We'd have to figure out if you're in action, and chances are you're not. You're in one of the first 3 stages, and if you're here at tonight's webinar, you're at least in stage 2 contemplation. Perhaps you're in stage 3 preparation. Maybe you really haven't made some plans and you're looking for information about that. But action is truly time to change. In other words, yes, we are going to throw the cigarettes away, okay? It's all going to go in the trash, but there's other things that go along with that. Now, you have decided that you're not going to hang with the same old crowd, because we've talked about, you know, not going to slippery places if you don't want to slip. And you're not going to go to those same old places. Maybe that means that you're not going to go to bars for a while, or maybe that means that you're not going to hang out with your friends at work on smoke breaks. Yes, there's going to be some major life changes, but you're not going to pick up a cigarette anymore. That's what stage 4 action is all about. Then, once we've done that, stage 5 maintenance, staying there. Okay, now at this stage, we're going to work on maintaining your new lifestyle and find ways to prevent lapses and relapses, as they're called. We're going to learn how to deal with those cravings, those urges to light up. We'll talk about that this evening, how that's going to pass, you know, in a relatively brief period of time, just 2 to 3 weeks. Now, when you're going through it, maybe that doesn't sound brief, but we'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. But again, we're talking about maintenance. developing new friends, going to new places, new activities, or maybe doing things that you used to do. But one way or another, not picking up a cigarette no matter what. And we're also going to talk about some very simple tools that I'm going to suggest to you for ways to avoid being able to do that, especially in those first critical 2 to 3 weeks. However, I hope you came here for some truth tonight, because the truth of the matter is we're talking about being a cigarette smoker here, or as I would say, nicotine addiction, okay? And when you're an addict, just because you stop using the substance doesn't mean that you're still not an addict. And you know, this is a belief, a methodology, if you will, that's practiced in 12-step programs for a variety of different things, you know, that people have going on in their lives. And it's also supported by medical professionals and science as well. It's just saying that this is an addictive substance, and when you become addicted, you can't just stop using it for a little while. For most people, that means for the rest of their lives, they're going to be smoke-free. So we're going to talk about ways of staying there. Now, here's the good news for you smokers out there, because stage 6 is called termination. And I believe, from my own research, from my own personal experience as a smoker and now living a smoke-free lifestyle for many years, that there can come a point in time for someone who is no longer a smoker to be around people and not be tempted very much, okay, at a very maintenance level and beyond, to where you can be comfortably around people who are smoking and not be tempted. All things being equal. Now, we'll talk about that in greater detail, and this is not the time to get into you know, more stories about that, because for right now, we're just talking about the 6 stages of change, with the big learning here that action is stage 4, because, folks, that's why so many people fail. They decide, for whatever reason, I'm going to quit. And without going through these stages, they throw the pack of cigarettes away. Maybe they go out and get the patch and just think that somehow willpower alone, desire alone is going to work. And, folks, it simply does not. We're talking about an addiction here. In fact, a deadly addiction, if I haven't already gotten your attention with that, okay? So we're preparing to quit. Looking at the next slide. You'll notice here that it begins by saying, once you know you are in stage 3. Now, here's your pop quiz that you weren't expecting. What's stage 3? All right, let's think back for a moment. First stage is pre-contemplation. I don't have a problem. There's nobody here who's in pre-contemplation, I don't think. Stage 2, contemplation. We're starting to think about it. Maybe it's a problem. Maybe someday I need to do something about this. But stage 3, preparation. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. If you're in preparation, then we can start. And START is our acronym here for these steps in the process. Let's take a look at these for a moment. To begin, knowing you're in preparation and that you're going to set a date within 30 days, that's the very first thing we're going to do, is set a quit date. Now, I'm going to suggest to you in setting a quit date that if you're really ready, that we pick a date that is within the next 2 weeks to quit. Now, why? If you've been thinking about it long enough and you really are in preparation, that's going to give you enough time to get ready, but it's not so long that you're going to lose your drive to quit, okay? Perhaps think about choosing a special day. Could be, if there happens to be one that's coming up here soon for you, if it's your birthday or, you know, just a special day for you in your life somehow, if it has some sort of significance for you and your mate or your friends, if something like that works. On the other hand, if you smoke at work, quit on the weekend, or during a day off, okay, sometime in the next 2 weekends here. That way you'll be ready to go back being cigarette-free when you return. The next step, T, talk to your doctor. Okay, now I didn't mention, by the way, when I introduced myself to you at the start of this evening's webinar, I am a certified professional coach, but I am not a licensed medical professional. Okay, I'm not a doctor. And I highly stress to everyone, be sure to talk to your doctor before quitting smoking. Again, this is a highly addictive substance. Most doctors will agree with many of you folks may have heard somebody say something like, well, cigarettes are just as addictive as heroin, and most doctors that I've talked to agree with that. That's just how nasty smoking cigarettes really is, folks. If you're a non-smoker, be sure to stay that way. If you're a smoker, you're going to learn here tonight how to be, I'm not going to say non-smoker, and I'll tell you why just a little later on. I'm going to say smoke-free. Big difference to your subconscious. We'll talk about that a little later. Talk to your doctor, please. You are going to be going through withdrawals. You're going to be experiencing other symptoms from this addictive substance once you stop using it. Which brings us to A, anticipate and plan for challenges. That's part of what tonight's all about. We're going to be doing that in just a couple of minutes here. Once we've done all that, okay, R, remove tobacco from home, car, and work. And I mean remove everything, okay? No excuses. Remember, and I'm speaking to the smokers in the room here this evening, I'm sorry, on our worldwide broadcast. You're an addict. Your addict brain, that little voice inside your head, those feelings that you get, those urges that you get to light up, all that stuff that we've been talking about is going to give you any number of reasons why you should hang on to a lighter or hang on to one just in case. There is no such thing as just have one, okay? You're an addict. I want you to remove everything from everywhere. Make your loved ones proud, okay? And speaking of that, the last step on start here, T, tell family, friends, and coworkers you have quit. Now, notice, please, that's here at the end of these steps, and here's why. I'm going to suggest to you, especially for the folks in the room here who have quit before, tried to quit before, you probably started telling people that you were going to be quitting, that you were thinking about quitting. Now you understand the stages of change, and you can understand you were just expressing to your friends and loved ones, what was going on in your head. And that's fine. But now, folks, and again, I'm speaking to the smokers here, let's tell family, friends, and coworkers you have quit after you have quit. For right now, let's keep this a private affair as far as most of the world is concerned. We know you're going to talk to your doctor and your significant other, certainly. But let's not put yourself in a situation here where you are setting yourself up for failure by talking to folks about something that you're going to be doing and then not do it again. Okay. So once we've gone through all these steps, that's when we're going to tell family, friends, and coworkers you have quit. And just think how proud they're going to be of you on that first day or whenever you tell them. Now, here's those steps in a nutshell. Set a quit date within the next 2 weeks. Talk to your doctor. Ask for his help and advice. Anticipate and plan for challenges in the first 3 weeks and the first 3 months. We'll break those down a little bit. I just was giving you a little lecture here, and I apologize, but I'm pretty passionate about this. Remove all cigarettes and accessories. No exceptions. Now, here's something to add about tell your family, friends, and coworkers you have quit, okay, and how they can help you. Please reach out for help. People will be so proud of you, and they will be so happy to help you. And especially for those of you who smoke at work, reach out to your coworkers and explain to them in advance that with your coworkers who are also smokers that you've been going, stepping outside with for those smoke breaks, that you are not going to be joining them. And here's why I'm asking you to do this. For the first 3 weeks, you do not want to be around anybody who is smoking a cigarette, period. Now, I'm not suggesting that you be rude to people, but for example, at work, please explain to your coworkers, your smoking friends, what you're doing and why you are not going to be joining them for a little while. Okay, this isn't going to be forever, but especially those first 3 weeks is just so critical as you're going through withdrawals and going through all of the changes associated with no longer using an addictive substance. You do not be around people who are using. Okay, and I'm using addict language here. Okay, you don't want to be around people who are using. In this case, smoking cigarettes. So please consider doing some things like that. Also, at home, by the way, if you live with someone who is a smoker, there's certainly going to be some conversations that need to take place there. Explain to that person, your loved one, your family, whoever that may be, or they may be, what you're going to be doing. And ask that these people help you in any way that they possibly can, okay? That's really one of the wonderful parts of this whole process. So you're reestablishing relationships with family, friends, and coworkers, many of whom think you now smell like an ashtray. Nothing personal, again, with all love and respect coming from someone who has now smoke-free for many years. Okay, now we've arrived at quit day. We've gone through the steps and start. You've identified where you are in the processes of change. You're good to go. I'm going to suggest that you begin quit day and every day with an affirmation. Okay, and simply put, just things that you say to yourself. And begin by saying, I am smoke-free. Now, I mentioned a few moments ago the language around this. And here's a little insight into how your mind works. And what we're talking about here is the subconscious mind. And of course, I'm sure you all have heard these terms before: the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. And the conscious mind is your thinking mind. The subconscious mind, of course, carries on a variety of activities. And also, there's a whole set of beliefs and things happening in your subconscious mind that often we're not aware of. And the things that you say to yourself has a huge impact on the beliefs that you have about yourself at a subconscious level, and this can have a significant impact on your ability to change. Now, if you've never heard this before, it may sound a little silly, but your subconscious mind does not understand the word no. I'll give you a simple example. You've quit smoking. You're in the first couple of days. You're having urges. You're thinking to yourself, man, I really want a cigarette. I don't want a cigarette. I don't want a cigarette. I don't want to smoke. I don't want to smoke. Guess what? You're thinking about smoking as far as your subconscious mind is concerned. It can't tell the difference. So that's why I'm suggesting to you that you think of yourself as being smoke-free. I am smoke-free. You are free from smoke. You are now free to start living your life, to re-engage with life. Also, a little bit from some recovery programs. One day at a time. Oftentimes, especially in those first critical days and weeks, for a smoker, you're thinking thoughts in your head going, oh my God, I can never have another cigarette for the rest of my life. Now, it may sound silly to someone who's never been a smoker, but these are the sorts of things that you think about, because smoking has become such a part of your life. As we said earlier, not only are you physically addicted, you're mentally addicted, emotionally addicted, There's a lot of changes going on here. You don't have to be smoke-free for the rest of your life. You just have to be smoke-free for one day at a time. And in those first critical weeks, maybe it's 1 hour at a time, maybe 1 minute at a time. And we're going to talk about very simple ways to be able to do that. We mentioned talking to other people. Also, there's a lot of support systems out there. 1-800-QUIT-NOW is one example. I happen to live in California, and here in California, for California residents, there's a service available by phone and, of course, online. People who are quitting, trying to quit, can get help and support there. And there's all sorts of resources that you can go to, and I'll tell you about that at the end of tonight's webinar. Now, I'm remembering that we're back on Quit Day, their very first day. We're going to keep busy with a variety of activities and places to go. Do things with your hands and put in your mouth. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, initially, it's a real good idea to be able to have some things to do with your hands, no matter what that might be. Again, it's been part of your makeup. Carrot sticks, celery sticks, things like that that you can eat. Please stay away from sugary snacks. Drinking water, real important. We'll talk about other things as well. But most importantly, and I can't emphasize this enough for you folks, stay away from temptation and remember your triggers. Now, let's talk about some very specific steps that you can take in those moments that are going to be critical to your success. And you may want to make a note of a couple of these. The first thing, please, to remember, urges to smoke will come and go. Yes, you are going to have urges, especially in those first 3 weeks. But their frequency and severity will continually decrease over time. It's going to get better and better and better. And for many people, it goes away altogether. But for right now, we have a plan. Here's a couple of suggestions. Those of you who are at home right now, if you happen to have a rubber band handy, put it on your wrist, and you'll really get the full impact of this. For those of you who don't, no worries. Just tap on your wrist as I suggest this to you, okay? Let's say that you are wearing a rubber band on your wrist, like you would wear a watch on your wrist. And just, a big one, something you can have there comfortably. And every time you start to have an urge to smoke, that thought comes up, I want a cigarette. The feelings, the cravings, the urges, however you relate to those, snap that rubber band on your wrist. This is a method called distraction. And it's used in a variety of ways, but this is a real simple, fun way to do it. So you're wearing that rubber band, you're getting that urge, snap that rubber band on your wrist. It gets your, and if you don't have a rubber band on right now, just kind of tap your finger on your other wrist and kind of, get that little snap. And as you do that, you're going to hear my voice say, snap out of it. Okay? Snap out of it. That's going to distract you for just a moment, long enough to take the next step, which is 3 deep breaths. Now, I'm going to ask everybody on tonight's call to take a deep breath with me. We're going to do that in a special way. If you would exhale and push all the air out of your lungs. Then as you start to breathe in from your abdomen, your stomach comes out a little bit. This is the way athletes and musicians breathe, and also in meditation. And what this does is it completely fills your lungs with air, really gets oxygen into your blood. So let's take a deep breath together, if you would, with me. Begin with breathing out, and then in slowly from the stomach. Hold that for a moment, and all the way out again. Now, I've got our worldwide audience on mute this evening, and you couldn't hear the smokers doing this. And guys, with love and respect, but one of the things that you will find very quickly, being a smoke-free person, as you take these deep breaths, and you can do this anytime, you connect to yourself and you connect to life. That's the insanity of this disease, this addiction. It is deadly. We already saw the cost and the toll. So when you make the decision to be smoke-free, you connect to yourself, to your true values, and you connect again to life. So when you breathe in, you're breathing in life. You're no longer breathing in cigarette smoke. And coming back to our immediate focus here, when you're having that craving, we're going to snap your wrist, snap out of it, okay, and then stop, if you can, of course, and just take 3 deep breaths and connect to yourself. You can do this just about anywhere. Now, the next thing I'm going to suggest to you is real important, and that's drinking water throughout the day. Now, if you're in a place when you're having that urge, if you can stop and take a drink of water, that's wonderful. Regardless, I'm really going to suggest to you, strongly suggest to you, that you drink 10 glasses of water a day. Now, if you're not a big water drinker right now, that may sound like a lot of water, but in no time at all, your body will become very used to it. It's great for overall good health, one of the essential steps. But even more importantly right now, remember, you have stopped smoking cigarettes, you're going through withdrawals, your body is detoxing. There's a lot of poisons in your body, everywhere in your body. All of your organs, your bloodstream, throughout your body is filled with the toxins from nicotine and the other things in cigarettes. It's essential that we have water going through your system all the time. There's many, many benefits that we'll talk about. I also mentioned a few moments ago keeping other things around, carrots, apples, gum, something to be able to do with your mouth, something to be able to do with your hands, something to take your mind off the craving. And from a longer-term perspective, if you're able to, make a note, and if you have a little binder or a piece of paper, something you can carry with you, or of course, you can make entries on your phone or other device, but however you do it, if you can make a note of where you are and what's going on, this becomes your journal. And if you will continue to do this as you have these cravings, you'll see that they happen at certain times, maybe when you're watching TV in the evening, or maybe when you're driving, or maybe when you're at work. You'll see what your triggers are, what your patterns are. Finally, remind yourself you're in recovery from an addictive substance, and there is no such thing as I'll just have one. There is no such thing. Now, and we're all going to get to some happier stuff in just a moment here, by the way, folks, but I want to be very, very real with you as we talk about these things, because especially, I'm sure, for many of the smokers in the audience tonight who have tried to quit before, you're aware of all of these things, and you're not looking forward to them. You have them in the back of your mind, but know that there are ways to severely reduce the symptoms of withdrawal. And to begin with, not everyone has symptoms of withdrawal. And again, their number and severity of these symptoms can be significantly reduced by your new behaviors that we were just talking about, especially drinking water. Now, what are these symptoms? Feeling depressed, not being able to sleep, getting cranky, frustrated, or mad, feeling anxious, nervous, or restless, having trouble thinking clearly, muscle tightness or aches and headaches. Yes, all of these things are part of withdrawals. However, for the vast majority of people who do experience some of these symptoms, they pretty much go away within the first 2 to 3 weeks. Again, that first 3-week period. And we have a plan. And there's a number of things you can do to minimize those symptoms. And once you go through withdrawal, you never have to do it again. And hopefully you won't ever want to, but what if you do slip? In other words, what if you pick up a cigarette? Because as I'm sure many of you know, thinking you can just smoke one will pretty much take you right back to where you were before as far as your smoking and your addiction. And as we also know, most people do slip. So if you do, please tell yourself, you've had just a small setback. It doesn't make you a smoker again. Now, I'll contradict myself and tell you don't be too hard on yourself and don't be too easy either. Please don't rationalize. Please don't forget everything that you've learned. And in fact, feel good about the time that you went without smoking. Earlier we talked about journaling, looking at your patterns. You've found the triggers. And decide what you will do next time you're in one of those places or doing one of those activities. In other words, learn from your experience what helped you the most. And having done all that, review your plan and journal, because it is proven to work. Now, do you see your doctor for medication? And what we're talking about is nicotine replacement therapy, also called NRT. Most people are familiar with nicotine gum and, of course, the patch. Many of you may know that these medications are very expensive, and essentially they're designed to wean you off nicotine so as to help you get through the withdrawal symptoms and the urges that we've been talking about. And I'm not here to suggest to you that one or the other, using medication or not using medication, is right for you. That's something that you have to decide. You can do it both ways. Now, earlier we talked about the stages of change. There are also some processes that go along with these stages that I think you can now see working in everything that we've talked about, and I think this is a real good way to kind of sum up what we've been talking about. These first processes that we're talking about, and these are things that just naturally happen psychologically, emotionally, mentally, as people are going through change. But what Dr. Prochaska and his colleagues found was that certain processes are most effective at certain times, in other words, within the stages. These processes that we're looking here are most effective with stages 2 and 3, contemplation and preparation. And think about the examples that I've given you of all of these things as we talk about them briefly. See if this is helpful for you and where you are right now, and perhaps something you need to think about or do a little bit more. Consciousness raising. Increasing information about yourself and the problem. We talked about that a lot. Social liberation. Increasing social alternatives for behaviors that are not problematic. Going to different places, hanging out with different people, doing different things. Emotional arousal. That's something that we didn't talk about a lot tonight. I hope you've experienced it from me as part of tonight's presentation, because this is something that I'm very emotional about for the reasons that we talked about. The death toll and the cost, needless to say, is unbelievable. If it was anything else in our country or in the world, if you stop and think about it, if there was a war going on that was killing 500,000 soldiers a year, I mean, obviously, something like that would never be allowed to happen, never would happen. But this silent and deadly killer is among us, and it's legal, a legal drug. And again, I'm speaking to addicts in the audience, okay? So I'm very emotional about what's happening for all of the smokers out there. And I'm also very passionate about wanting to help them because I have many years of experience as a smoke-free person and how wonderful it is to be able to breathe, to be able to smell, to be able to taste, to be able to be around others, everyone, people who smoke, people who don't smoke, everybody, and to feel comfortable and to feel at ease and to have peace of mind and not experience cravings or longings or urges for a cigarette. What a wonderful way to be able to live. Which brings us to self-reevaluation, assessing feelings and thoughts about yourself with respect to the problem, because you can feel this way. And of course, we've talked about commitment, choosing and committing to act, or belief in the ability to change. Now, we talked about belief earlier in tonight's presentation and the things that we believe. And when you stop and think about it, there are many things that we believe about the world, how the world works, what the people in the world are like. And we also have a lot of beliefs about ourselves, the kind of people that we are, our abilities, our strengths, weaknesses. The list goes on and on. What we're talking about now is the belief in the ability to change. Having been through these stages, having been through these processes, and knowing that change is possible. And then the remaining processes of change, which, as it says, are most effective in stages 4 and 5, action and maintenance. Countering, substituting alternatives for problem behavior. Now, we've talked a lot about that. Something that I haven't mentioned when we're talking about countering, one of the big concerns I find that many people have is weight gain. And not to be sexist, but it seems that more of my women clients have concerns about this than men, because actually it's been proven clinically that women do tend to gain more weight than men. And there is some evidence that smokers will gain weight after they quit, even if they don't eat more. And of course, that's because there are so many changes going on in your body with your metabolism, the way everything works. Now, over the course of time, 6 months to a year, your body can return to all of its normal functioning in some amazing ways. But in the meantime, coming back to countering and substituting alternatives, what are really not good ideas for stuff to do, especially in the evening, is processed foods and foods with sugar. And what we're talking about are snack foods and desserts, comfort foods, convenient foods, the foods that we all love, but foods that can be very counterproductive to our overall goals of a healthy and happy life. So if at all possible, please find some alternatives that you like. Now, we can be talking about some things like fruit or nuts or any variety of foods that are natural foods that don't have a lot of calories and fat in them, and again, that you like, that you feel comfortable with. Popcorn that you pop yourself that doesn't have a lot of stuff on it is said to be a real nice sort of snack. And again, we're not talking about putting a lot of butter and salt on it, but it doesn't have a lot of calories, doesn't have a lot of bad stuff in it, and really fills you up. So ideas like that you can explore and develop, the things that you like to do. And again, all of this is going to go away over a period of time. Now, environmental control, we talked about that a lot, and I'll just mention again that especially in those first critical weeks and months, we don't want to be around people or going to places where they're smoking. Sometimes the temptation is just too much. You'll be able to do that over time. We talked about helping relationships, enlisting the help of someone who cares. And finally, rewards. Now, we really haven't talked about that a whole lot, but rewarding yourself and being rewarded by others is just so powerful. And I'd like to leave you tonight with something that we've looked at before. It's called the Wheel of Health and Wellness. And if you'd like to take a pen and paper out, if you have one handy, and draw a big circle on your page and divide it into 8 sections like you see there, like a pie. We're going to go around and start to use this tool just a little bit, because this truly is a very simple, easy, and powerful way to be able to bring all the things together that we have been talking about tonight. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to rate each section on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being the center of the circle and 10 being the outside of the circle. And on a scale of 0 to 10, how satisfied are you? What's your level of emotional satisfaction with each one of these areas? Now, I started out saying that we're smoke-free, so that one's rated at 10. We don't even see a line because it's all the way up there on the outside of the circle. On hydration, in other words, drinking water, and by the way, a question that I get a lot, does it have to be water? The answer, folks, is yes. Even quote-unquote healthy beverages like fruit juices or other types of beverages like that, or coffee, or of course things like soft drinks, all have a lot of other ingredients in them, and the body processes them as food. It doesn't recognize it as hydration. That's why water is so important. We want to get all of water's benefits, its detoxifying benefits, its oxygenation benefits to every of the 10 trillion cells in your body. That's why we want to drink 10 glasses a day. And that one's pretty easy here on a scale of 0 to 10. Exercise. Now, I hate to use the E word, but both in dealing with withdrawals and urges, as well as embracing life and your new smoke-free lifestyle, having an active lifestyle is real important for a variety of reasons, and I know we've all heard it, but in a nutshell, there's a lot of easy ways to do it. Just doing stretching exercises while you're watching TV, walking at a brisk pace. I'm sure you've heard it over and over again. The important thing is just to do a little bit of it every day. Now, nutrition, we haven't talked about that a lot tonight, but needless to say, while we are detoxing and all of these different changes are happening in your body, it's real important for it to have all of the nutrition that it needs. For those of you who are interested in taking supplements, I highly recommend the best quality supplements that you can find. Some people buy them at health stores, and doctors sell pharmaceutical-grade supplements that are the best quality you can find on the market. I highly recommend those for getting the nutrition that you need that we can't get from food. And finally, of course, we talked about weight a little bit, especially with those late-night snacks and eating to replace cigarette smoking. If we're doing the other things that we're talking about here, weight gain is not going to be as much of a problem. But in those first critical weeks, really make every effort that you possibly can to stay away from the snack foods and the desserts, because that's just going to put, with the reduction in your metabolism and those extra calories, especially eating at night, you don't burn them off, and you just might as well apply that stuff to you directly, because it's going to appear depending on your body shape and how you store your fat as belly fat in guys or hip fat in women or other areas of your body that you don't want to be carrying that weight around on. Just know that you have a plan. The urges and the symptoms are going to go away. There's going to be a couple of weeks where things might be a little rough, but we've got a plan. We know what to do, and we know that really, if you think about, as long as you've been smoking, however many months or years or decades that's been, what's it worth you to go through really just a few weeks of those withdrawal symptoms, the urges, the uncomfortableness, the irritability, and the loved ones in the audience are going, yeah, I know, but we can all do this together. And with this plan and with these simple steps, and most importantly with the understanding of how people change and why it's so important to put a plan together and to start only when you're ready, and then to follow that plan, and finally to have a simple overall vision of what you'd like your life to be. Now, you'll notice on this wheel of health and wellness, I put on here what I believe are the real keys to a healthy and happy life. Drinking water, having an active lifestyle, eating good food, maintaining a good weight. You'll also notice that there's 3 blank sections on the wheel. For you to ultimately fill out your wheel, I'm going to suggest that you pick 3 categories for those other sections and completely fill out your wheel. Now, it may end up looking like the one that you see here in the little example. And if that was, and we're trying to draw a wheel within a wheel here, okay? But if that was a wheel on your bike, how wide would the rough be? How rough would the road be? How rough would the ride be? But we're going to start after we're smoke-free, of course, and work on each one of these areas. Choose one of the 8 areas that's most important to you, and ask yourself a question, just for one of those areas at a time. What's one small step you can take that cannot possibly fail, that you can start today, just to move that score up 1 number? We're just going to do this step by step, improving each one of those areas a little bit at a time, working on them one at a time. Let's say it's drinking water, for example. You want to get to that 10 glasses a day. You're at 5 glasses a day right now. Can you drink 6 tomorrow? You're already doing 5. Can you drink 6? Do you know you can do that? Great. Let's do that for a day or 2. Then can you drink 7? We'll just do it 1 step at a time, as slow or as fast as you want to do it. That's the process that we're talking about. And as I asked you, how's that ride so far? Pretty bumpy? Well, how would it feel if your wheels was round and the ride is smooth? How fast and how far can you go when your wheel is round? How would it feel to have some help? Well, I mentioned that at the start of tonight's webinar that I am a certified professional coach. I'm a health coach, and I truly believe that coaching can make a difference. It adds support and accountability. I conduct sessions over the phone or over the internet on days and times that are convenient for my clients. And coaching creates a dynamic partnership that identifies obstacles and empowers clients. It embodies the process you've seen here tonight, but that goes on a regular weekly basis and makes a huge difference in someone's ability to change, because it creates and sustains the mindset that we were talking about to make lasting changes in thinking and behavior, because it identifies obstacles to change and creates customized strategies for success, all those things that we've been talking about. And you can try it for free. For all my listeners tonight, if you act in the next 24 hours, I'd be happy to provide you with a complimentary coaching session. It's a 30-minute review of your wheel and next steps, or really whatever you'd like to do. And if you decide that something like this is for you, only after we've done a complimentary session and you had a time to think about it or whatever you like, if you decide that this is for you, I have some special prices for my listeners tonight too, on if you want to just do an individual session or a couple of individual sessions, or what I recommend most is 8 weekly sessions that I have at a very special price for you tonight of only $320. It's a savings of $160. And for the smokers out there, think about the amount of money that you're spending on cigarettes right now. That's a heck of a deal, and what a wonderful way to begin living a great life. And that's my information. My telephone number is 805-202-8101. You can call me anytime. You can visit my website, stepwaytohealth.com, and you can email at me at info@stepwaytohealth.com. For more information or to schedule a session, or if you'd like a list of other resources, I can provide you with a list of other resources such as Nicotine Anonymous, the National Cancer Institute, the American Heart Association. There's a lot of great resources out there, and I'd be happy to do whatever I can to help you, if it's quit smoking, as I believe most of the folks on the call tonight are trying to do, or really any bad habit. I picked, probably one of the most serious ones out there, but there's others too, and they all work with this process of understanding the stages of change and understanding the coaching process. Well, thanks again to David Ajibadi and Building Strength Webinars for having me here this evening, and thank you to all the folks around the world who have joined us tonight. Wishing you a very healthy and happy